Hi, I'm Captain Ed Monette from Cannonball Runner Charters. Um, I'm here to talk to you today about clear water brown trout fishing. Um, I've been getting numerous phone calls, texts, emails from people, messages asking us what we do different than anybody else. So I've also had a couple of my sponsors ask me to do some of this. So I am going to give us a try and see if I help anybody out. So that being said, um, what are the factors that we do a little different for clear water brown trout fishing? First factor, traffic. Traffic is my number one factor in brown trout fishing, period, whether it's clear water, whether it's dirty water, whatever. I do not like boat traffic when you're clear water brown trout fishing. So I don't leave the dock at, say, 4:30 in the morning. We leave at 6. We leave at 6 for multiple reasons. We leave at 6 because it's easier for customers to be on the boat. They don't have to get up as early. We leave at 6 because most tournaments start at 6 fishing. So we're in the groove when the sun is already up in the first place. So what do we do when we come out of the dock at 6 a.m.? The first thing I do as I'm coming out of the shooter in Oswego is I'm going to be slowed down. I'm going to look to my east. I'm going to look to my west. And wherever the most boats are, I'm definitely going the other way. Not saying, guys aren't going to catch a fish or two when they're all together. But for the most part, boat traffic is working against what you're trying to accomplish. Okay? I'm going to go the other way. It doesn't matter if I caught my box to the west the day before. The next day, I'm going to go east. If that next day I catch my box to the east and there's a lot of boats, I'm going to go west. It really doesn't matter because brown trout are structure-oriented fish. I guess a lot of friends of mine that fish brown trout specifically by temperature, and I don't do that. I fish structure, I fish bait, and it's been pretty successful for us over the years. I mean, it's just something that we do. I mean, that's the way we fish. Now, everybody has to have their own niche of how they fish. So, but my number one is traffic. I see traffic, I'm definitely going the other way. There are days that I'll drive 10 miles down the shoreline just to get away from boats. Especially in clear water. Yes. Can you tolerate a boat or two? Yes. When you get a cluster of 4 or 5 boats, you're definitely working against yourself. So if that's number one, what's my number two? So my number two, and this is going to sound, it's going to sound like everybody should know this. But number two is, to me, sometimes something that I really think people think they know what a natural color is, and maybe they really don't. So lure color is my number two. And lure color is your blues, your greens, your blacks. Those are natural. Everybody knows that. It's not rocket science. Everybody knows that. But what are we doing different with our blues, greens, and blacks that other people aren't doing? So everybody hears 50 bites in March, all this kind of stuff. Everybody hears that. Well, the problem is a lot of guys fall in love with certain lures, and they'll be using those lures in clear water when it's May, when it's June. Well, it kind of makes you chuckle in some ways, because the clear water, you know, you don't want to be able to see a lure 400 feet, you know, away from the fish. A fish shouldn't be 400 feet up the shoreline and pick out a lure. A lot of people, what they don't understand also is one lure can mess up your spread. So if you got a spread, and this is what happens, I hear this all the time, well, I have to throw this lure out there because it's my favorite. I don't have any favorite lures. My favorite lure is the last one that caught a fish. So if you're falling in love with the lure, yes, you probably catch more fish off the lure. You better, because it's probably in the water 80% of the time. So, but a lot of times you might not realize your favorite lure is scaring fish away from the boat. So, you probably have all heard this. Well, I had to leave that lure on there because we caught 3 of them first thing in the morning off it, or we had 3 bites off it, and we haven't had a bite on anything else. So what's changed? Why is that lure not working now? A lot's probably changed. Probably what has changed is simple. It's probably a simple thing is the sun's gotten higher. That shade of blue or that shade of green that you were using now doesn't look the same as it did when you started an hour and a half ago. So, but you're on the right track. You just probably need to find a different shade. Well, another thing that I do, and it's, it's when it comes to lures and natural colors, I don't even like to use new lures. I like to use old lures, beat up lures. That's what we like to do. We like beat up lures when the water's clear. We don't want something that's really shiny. Why? Because is it natural for you to see a fish to see your lure again coming 400 feet up the shoreline? No, it's not natural. That's not what natural bait looks like in the water. Fish aren't spotting them half a mile away and swimming towards your boat. That's not what's going on. So, something has always changed when that happens. So, that being said, when you were a kid, think of it this way. When you were a kid and you were standing on the shoreline, everybody saw alewives as a regular basis. They saw their alewives looking down into the water. When they did, if you remember right, you could really barely see them. They were translucent. So you'd only get a flicker once in a while. You didn't just see the fish constantly swimming. So keep that in mind when you're thinking of your natural colors. When you throw out that one chartreuse or one orange lure and say, well, I might hit dirty water half a mile down the shoreline, and I'm going to put it the furthest outside the boat so it won't scare anything. That's not true. It is scaring stuff. You're scaring fish right away from your boat, right from your spread. Again, keep detailed what's going on. Details are a big part of this. If you remember what you did the first hour and what that lure was doing and what it looked like in the water, try to match that as the sun's getting higher. That's what we do. So the next thing that we pay a lot of attention to is stealth. Stealth. What do we do that's different than other people when it comes to stealth? How low will you go? That's where it comes down to a nutshell. We run 6-pound test. We'll run 6-pound test seaguar on our flat lines, and we'll run 6-pound test on our lead core. So you're running 6-pound tests and charters, people are thinking, well, you're crazy. Yeah, we'll lose a few lures. Yes, we do. That's not, I'm not going to deny that. But we use a lot of good equipment like our Okuma cold waters. We use our Okuma white diamonds, which are fantastic. We use the 7'6" for brown trout, and they're medium light. So the medium light makes up for a lot of angler mishaps because the tip is so fast. And at the same time, you know, our experiences from times on the water is constantly adjusting the drag by what we're watching with the fish swimming up to the shoreline or coming in with the customer. We're seeing how much strain is on that 6-pound test. So we're constantly tweaking the drag back and forth. So again, that comes with experience. Are you going to lose a few lures? Yes. But do you think 6-pound test makes a difference? Yes, we do. We've proven it time after time. On one side of the boat, running 1-pound test, and another side, we're running another pound test. What side's getting the most strikes? So, again, to go to stealth, we use torpedo swivels. We'll use the smallest swivels that Torpedo makes. That's what we use because they're strong, they're reliable, and they haven't failed us. And you know, our tournament record speaks for itself, and that's what we're using. We're using the same thing that we use in tournaments is what we use during a charter. So, I mean, I'm not going to use something that's going to cost us a fish in a tournament. So I'm not going to cost a client a fish. So that being said, we're using torpedoes. That's what we do. The stealth part goes, we use stealth core for lead core. We'll lead her down to 6-pound test. And again, we're adjusting the drags the way it needs to be adjusted while our clients fighting the fish. So people say, well, lead core, well, I just put a split shot on there. Well, my theory to that, the water's clear. The rocks float? No. So what's that little pebble look like 6 feet up or 8 feet up in front of a lure? They can see that. The water is clear. They're seeing your boat. They're feeling the vibrations of your boat. They're seeing the shadow of your boat, just like if you stream fish and you're looking over the bank in your shadow. This all is going on under the water. These fish are hungry fish all the time. These fish they gorge themselves. They're hogs. They're never on a diet. My personal belief is they eat all the time. You can't get that fat by not eating at certain points of the day. So they're going to be more of a, how do I want to word it? They're going to eat more at a time that they feel that they can eat at, other than, I'm trying to phrase this for you. They're not going to eat early in the morning and late at night. So they're not going to do that. They're just going to eat whenever they have a chance to eat is what they're going to do. So we use the lead core. It comes down to, what do you do for divers? Well, I never use a wire diver brown trout fishing. Don't matter if the water's clear. Doesn't matter if it's dirty. We just don't do that. I mean, that wire is going to scare fish. Now, do I know guys that catch fish with them? Sure, they do. I've got some good friends that's what they use. I don't do it. Again, I think a lot of people are asking me because our record speaks for itself. So we use slide divers. There's a reason that we use the slide divers. You can get further away from the boat. I mean, when I'm hearing fishing reports and guys are using divers 15 feet from the boat or something, well, that doesn't really, there's reasons why you see reports that they're not catching fish. It isn't all of a sudden the fish just, boom, they vanished out of the lake. These fish don't go from Alcott to Mexico Bay. They don't go from Mexico Bay to Henderson Harbor. They don't go from Sodus to Oswego. These are structure-oriented fish. So, again, we are looking at fishing structure, clear water. We're fishing bait. That's what we do. I know there's guys that fish temperature. I'm a believer that it's not as big a deal. You know, the guys that fish temperature, they catch fish also. But I'm a believer, if there's bait there, they're eating. The bait's there, they're following it, they're eating. We have won tournaments in 70-degree water, catching fish in 70-degree water, and have a box in an hour and a half and be heading back to the dock. So that tells me, well, geez, it wasn't the perfect temperature. Why were those fish on the feed? Because they never stop eating. They don't go from a fingerling in 4 years to 10 pounds. It just, if they didn't eat because of temperature, then they wouldn't eat. So my next thing that's a little trickier to explain is speed. Speed is speed is relative to your boat. So what does, you know, you see a report that says something of or a buddy tells you that they're catching fish at 2.2. Well, your 2.2 on your boat might not be 2.2 on their boat. They could be trolling east and you're trolling west, and 2.2 could be too slow. 2.2 is too fast the other direction. So you can't look at, you know, what somebody's speed is. You need to know your boat. The next thing that you look at is, you know, when it comes to speed, is your fish hawk or moors or sub troll is not calibrated the same as mine. Everybody's boat is different. So take that into consideration. Your GPS probably isn't exactly the same as mine on my boat. So I've seen guys that say they're doing 2.2 and I'm doing 2.2 and they're walking away from me or they're falling behind me. Well, what's the reasoning there? A lot of it comes down calibration. So putting those as a factor in the speed, your biggest thing is with speed is, and I had a really good friend of mine having problems catching cut bait one time, catching fish on cut bait one time, and I told him to just put stuff out on his divers. And the reason I told him that was, once you figure out the speed on your divers, because they're the easiest to set, now you can work that into your riggers and your coppers and stuff like that. And it worked for him. He became successful because he started learning his boat. And that's the big key, learning your boat. So to put it in a nutshell is your lure color, traffic, speed, stealth. The next thing, and this is the hardest thing, and this is probably 1A instead of 1, is confidence. Confidence in what you're doing. The confidence in what you're doing is because of time on the water. The more time you spend on your water doing this, the better. Confidence isn't saying when I leave the dock, if we're not doing well in an hour, then we're going to go lake trout fishing. You might as well go lake trout fishing then. That's not confidence. Confidence is saying you're going to stick it out. One of the things that we do sticking it out is, and it helps us, is we got the confidence to, okay, this boat's fishing next to us. An hour goes by, they disappear. 20 minutes later, another boat disappears. Next thing you know, we're the only boat here. Sometimes our best time of fishing, and clients will attest to this, might be 10 to 12. Why? Because there's no other boats there. Yeah, and the sun's the highest it can be, but and the water's as clear as it can be, but we're catching fish. So what happens then? Well, now you get a person that will say they're on the radio talking to you, or they're talking to somebody else on the phone, and they know you caught fish. So they decide they're going to come in here with their lake trout gear, just pop the cowbells off and throw out a couple lures because maybe they're going to catch a brown trout. Well, what you just did now is hurt your buddy. You're better off to stay out there because you're only hurting their fishing too. Because now you created traffic. You're coming in here with heavier pound test, and you are now simply putting it, you're poking and hoping for a fish. That's not confidence. That's not confidence. So I'm hoping that this has helped you. I will tell you one thing. Confidence is time on the water. The more time you spend on the water, the more confident you're going to have. If you're going to go brown trout fishing, go brown trout fishing. The one other thing that I would say to you, it is very rewarding when you're catching your box in clear water. And most people don't believe it can be done. That's very rewarding. So tight lines. I'll see you on the water soon. Happy holidays, even though the holidays are just ended. But this is Captain Ed Monette, and I will talk to you later. Tight lines.